Bottle Trees. Chapter 1. The Last Will. South Carolina Low Country, October 1898. The rain came sideways across the marsh, hissing through the reeds before striking the old plantation house with a violence the walls had not felt in years. The servants refused to go upstairs. They whispered that the master had begun talking to people who were not there. By sundown, every lamp in the house had been lit. Yet, darkness seemed to cling to the corners of every room. Silas Whitcomb was dying. The physician had said his heart was failing, but everyone knew better. For weeks, Silas had awakened screaming at things no one else could see. He spoke names that had disappeared from the plantation records decades earlier. He begged invisible people for forgiveness. He clawed at his own bed sheets until his fingernails split and bled. Outside his bedroom window stood a grove of bottle trees. Dozens of blue glass bottles caught what little moonlight escaped the clouds. They trembled softly. There was no wind. Silas noticed. "They're listening," he whispered. The housekeeper crossed herself. "Who's listening, sir?" Silas's eyes never left the window. "They've come." A knock echoed downstairs. The family lawyer had arrived. Nathaniel Brooks removed his dripping coat and accepted no offer of supper. His horse had nearly refused to cross the causeway. Something about the property had felt wrong. The housekeeper met him in the foyer. "He's asking for you." "How much time?" She hesitated. "I don't believe time is the problem." Nathaniel frowned. "What does that mean?" She leaned closer. "He keeps counting people." "Counting?" "He says there are more people in his room than the house can hold." Nathaniel said nothing. He climbed the wide staircase, each step groaning beneath his polished shoes. At the end of the hallway, two servants stood outside the bedroom door. Neither would enter. Nathaniel pushed the door open. The room smelled of medicine, sweat, and candle wax. Silas Whitcomb looked 20 years older than he had only a month before. His skin clung to his bones. His breathing rattled, but his eyes were fixed on the empty corner of the room. "They're still there," Silas whispered. Nathaniel followed his gaze. Nothing, only shadows. "You asked for me." Silas turned slowly. "I need my will changed." Nathaniel opened his satchel. "You've already prepared one." "Not that one." His voice cracked. "The real one." Nathaniel sat beside the bed. "To whom are you leaving the estate?" Silas closed his eyes. For several moments, only the rain answered. Then he spoke. "Not my blood." Nathaniel looked up. "Excuse me?" Silas grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. "My blood cursed this place." His breathing became ragged. "I thought owning people made me powerful." His eyes filled with tears. "It only made me lonely." Nathaniel had practiced law for nearly 30 years. He had never seen a man this frightened of dying. "Who inherits?" Silas stared toward the window. The bottles outside rang together. One, then another. Then every bottle on every tree. The sound drifted through the rain like distant church bells. Silas began crying. "They're waiting." Nathaniel looked toward the glass. Lightning illuminated the yard. For the briefest instant, someone stood beneath the bottle trees. A woman wearing a white head wrap. Then the darkness swallowed her. Nathaniel blinked. The yard was empty. Silas whispered a single name. Amara. Nathaniel searched his memory. He had seen that name before. Not in a family Bible, not in a birth record. In the old plantation ledger, an enslaved woman. Silas squeezed Nathaniel's wrist until it hurt. "Right." Nathaniel hesitated. "You understand what you're asking?" "No." Silas swallowed painfully. I understand what happens if I don't. Nathaniel removed fresh paper. His pen hovered. Outside, thunder rolled across the marsh. Silas spoke slowly. I leave every acre. A child's laughter echoed somewhere downstairs. Nathaniel froze. There were no children living on the plantation. Silas didn't react. He simply continued. To Maya Ellis. Nathaniel's pen stopped moving. Ellis? Silas nodded. And every daughter born after her. Nathaniel stared at him. Your family will contest this. I know. The courts, I know. The town will never, I know. Silas suddenly looked past Nathaniel. His expression changed from fear to absolute terror. They're behind you. Nathaniel turned. The bedroom door had quietly opened. No one stood there. Yet muddy footprints appeared one after another across the polished wooden floor. Bare feet, small feet, large feet. Dozens of them, walking into the room, toward the bed. Nathaniel's heart pounded. Silas whispered one final sentence. It was never mine to give. His hand fell away. The candles went out, every one of them. The room plunged into darkness. From somewhere deep within the plantation house, someone began humming. Chapter 2. The Girl from the Bronx, New York City, present day. The first thing Maya Ellis noticed every morning was the sound. Not traffic, not sirens, not the rumble of the subway beneath the streets. Voices. The Bronx woke before the sun. Mrs. Delgado arguing with her grandson over breakfast. Mr. Robinson sweeping the sidewalk outside his barber shop. Kids racing each other toward school while someone blasted old school hip hop from a passing car. It was noisy, messy, alive. People who had never lived there called it chaotic. Maya called it home. She stepped out of her apartment building, balancing a coffee in one hand and a stack of research books in the other. A taxi splashed through a puddle. She jumped back just in time. Really? She muttered. The driver never looked up. She smiled despite herself. Home. Her phone buzzed. Claire. Brunch tomorrow? Everybody's finally free. Maya laughed softly. Everybody. That meant Hannah, Ethan, Davis. The same group that had somehow survived graduate school together at NYU, despite disagreeing about nearly everything. She typed back. Only if Hannah doesn't spend 2 hours photographing pancakes. 3 dots appeared immediately. No promises. Maya shook her head. Some things never change. By noon, she was walking through Washington Square Park toward the university archives. She loved old documents, letters, maps, forgotten newspapers. History rarely disappeared. It simply waited for someone willing to read it carefully. Professor Elena Morrison was already waiting when Maya arrived. Morning? Maya. The professor smiled. I've got something you might enjoy. She slid an uncatalogued collection across the table. Recently donated? Maya opened the first folder. Handwritten land records. Property surveys. Probate correspondence. The ink had faded to brown. Most students would have sighed. Maya leaned closer. This is beautiful. Professor Morrison laughed. I knew you'd say that. Hours disappeared. Outside, afternoon turned to evening. As Maya organized one final stack of documents, a brittle envelope slipped from between 2 maps. No return address, no postage. Just one handwritten line. For the Ellis family. Maya frowned. The paper looked impossibly old. Carefully, she unfolded it. Inside was a sketch. A large white house, live oak trees. Blue bottles hanging from the branches. Beneath the drawing were only 6 words. Come home before they erase us. Maya stared at the page. A chill crept across her shoulders. Professor? No answer. She looked up. The reading room was empty. The lights flickered once, then twice. A faint ringing echoed somewhere beyond the stacks. Glass. Soft, musical, as though bottles were singing in the wind. Maya turned toward the sound. At the end of the aisle stood an elderly black woman wearing a white head wrap. She smiled gently. Then, before Maya could speak, she was gone. The bottle trees. Chapter 3. Southbound. The rain found them somewhere in New Jersey. Not the hard, impatient rain that bounced off taxi roofs in Manhattan. This rain settled in. It blurred the windshield until the world became watercolor. Maya sat in the back seat of Claire's SUV, one sneaker resting on her duffel bag, her notebook balanced across her lap. The sketch from the archives lay folded between its pages. Come home before they erase us. She hadn't told anyone about it. Not Professor Morrison, not Nana Rose, not even herself. Claire drove with both hands gripping the wheel. 8 more hours, she announced, assuming Davis doesn't make us stop every 20 miles for barbecue. From the passenger seat, Hannah laughed. There's nothing wrong with appreciating regional cuisine. You've got a spreadsheet, Ethan said. It's color-coded. It has 17 restaurants. They're all highly rated. The SUV erupted in laughter. Even Maya smiled. For a little while, the strange envelope and the woman in the archives faded into the background. Davis looked over his shoulder from the third row. So, Maya, you ever been to South Carolina? She shook her head. My grandmother was born there. But she never took you? No. Did she ever say why? Maya stared out the rain-streaked window. She said some places remember things better left alone. Silence settled over the vehicle. Then Hannah laughed lightly. Your grandmother sounds mysterious. Maya smiled. She is. No one noticed Davis glance toward the GPS. No one noticed him quietly lower the volume on the radio. No one noticed him studying Maya in the rearview mirror, except Ethan. You okay? Ethan asked him. Davis blinked. Yeah. You look nervous. I'm driving into family history. He forced a smile. It does that to people. Hours passed. Cities became forests. Forests became open farmland. By the time they crossed into South Carolina, the air itself seemed different. Heavier, saltier, older. Maya rolled down her window. The scent of marsh grass drifted inside. Something about it felt familiar, not remembered, recognized, as if somewhere beneath memory, her body knew this place before her mind ever could. She closed her eyes. For one impossible second, she heard singing, low, gentle, carried on the wind. When she opened them again, the marsh was empty. Did y'all hear that? Hear what? Claire asked. Maya hesitated. Nothing. But as the SUV disappeared deeper into the low country, the singing followed, just beyond hearing, waiting. Chapter 4. The Bottle Trees. The paved road ended without warning. A narrow lane curved beneath towering live oaks draped in curtains of Spanish moss. Sunlight struggled through the canopy, turning everything beneath it green and gold. Claire slowed the SUV. This is gorgeous. It feels like another world, Hannah whispered, already reaching for her camera. Maya sat forward. There, just beyond the trees. Blue glass, then another, then dozens more. Bottle trees. Branches stretched toward the sky, each holding weathered bottles turned upside down, indigo, cobalt, emerald, amber. The glass shimmered even though the air was perfectly still. Maya's heartbeat quickened. Stop the car. Claire frowned. What? Stop. The SUV rolled to a halt. Maya stepped onto the damp earth. The moment her feet touched the ground, every bottle trembled. A soft chorus of glass drifted through the trees. Hannah looked around. Did you hear that? So you hear it too? Everyone nodded, except Davis. I don't hear anything. Maya walked slowly toward the nearest bottle tree. The bottles were old, some clouded with age, some cracked, some impossibly clean. She reached toward one. Before her fingers touched the glass, a warm hand rested on her shoulder. She spun around. No one. Only the road behind her. Maya, Claire called. You coming? Maya looked back at the tree. One bottle now pointed toward the plantation road. Not hanging, pointing, as if directing her. She swallowed hard. Nana? She remembered sitting in her grandmother's kitchen years ago. Never mock a bottle tree, baby. Why? Because some things don't belong among the living. Ghosts? Her grandmother smiled without answering. Now, standing beneath those same blue bottles, Maya wished she had asked more questions. Far above them, hidden among the branches, someone whispered her name. Chapter 5. Crossing the line. The plantation appeared gradually. First came the iron gate. Its hinges had long ago surrendered to rust. The family name, Whitcomb, was barely visible beneath vines. Beyond it stretched a winding shell road disappearing into the trees. Davis climbed out first. He rested one hand against the gate. My grandfather used to tell stories about this place. What kind of stories? Ethan asked. Davis hesitated. The kind old families don't write down. He pushed. The gate opened with a groan that echoed far longer than it should have. The sound rolled across the marsh. Birds exploded from the trees. Then everything went quiet. Too quiet. No insects, no frogs, no wind, only silence. They drove slowly. Slave cabins appeared first, small, weathered, leaning beneath centuries of storms. Nobody spoke. Hannah lowered her camera. Claire stopped smiling. Even Davis looked away. Maya stared at the cabins as they slipped past. One doorway stood open. A little girl, no older than 8, stood inside wearing a faded white dress. She watched the SUV pass. Maya blinked. The doorway was empty. The child was gone. Her breath caught. Stop. Claire hit the brakes again. What happened? There was someone in that cabin. Everyone looked back. Nothing, just darkness. Ethan climbed out. I'll check. No. Maya grabbed his arm. Don't. Before either of them could move, the plantation house emerged through the oaks. White columns, green shutters, 3 stories of fading grandeur rising above the marsh like a monument determined not to fall. It was beautiful, until you looked too long. Then the proportions began to feel wrong. The windows seemed too tall, the porch too wide, the shadows beneath the roofline too deep. The house didn't merely sit on the land, it watched it. Claire whispered, "It's incredible." Maya whispered something else. "It doesn't want us here." Davis looked at her. Actually, his smile returned. I think it's been waiting. Before Maya could ask what he meant, the front door of the plantation house swung open by itself. No wind, no footsteps, just the slow creak of old hinges. From somewhere inside the dark hallway came the unmistakable sound of a woman humming. It was the same melody Maya had heard in the marsh, the same melody that had drifted through the archives in New York. And beneath it, another voice, soft, patient, calling only one name. Maya. She had never told anyone she was coming. So who had been waiting?
Keeper's tale. The woman who hung the first bottle There are people who will tell you bottle trees were made to scare children. Those people don't know much. There are others who will tell you the decorations, yard art, something pretty to catch the sunlight. Those people know even less. My grandmother used to say there are two kinds of history: the kind written in books and the kind whispered after dark. The second kind is usually closer to the truth. You see, before there were plantations, before there were rice fields, before there were maps with somebody else's name scratched across the top, there were stories. Stories crossed oceans long before ships carried people in chains. Some traveled inside songs. Some traveled inside prayers. Some traveled inside grandmothers who refused to forget. The bottle tree was one of those stories. My grandmother told me about a woman named Naya. Nobody remembers exactly where in Africa she was born.
That was the point.
The people who bought her believed if they took away her language, her family, her name, then they'd taken everything. But they were wrong. Because memory can hide where no one thinks to look. Naya worked the rice fields from sunrise until the moon climbed over the marsh. Every evening she walked home carrying broken things: a cracked blue bottle, a chipped green one, sometimes clear glass, sometimes dark amber, whatever had been thrown away. The overseer laughed. "Making yourself a pretty little collection?" She smiled. "Yes, sir." She never told him the bottles weren't for her. One evening, another woman asked, "Why blue?" Naya held the bottle toward the sky. "Because blue remembers water." She turned it upside down. "And water always finds its way home." Every bottle she rescued carried a story. One belonged to a child taken away before sunrise. One belonged to a husband sold downriver. One belonged to a woman who sang so beautifully the birds landed beside her while she worked. Naya whispered every name into the mouth of each bottle. Then she hung them on the branches of a dead tree. People laughed until the dreams began. The overseer dreamed of footsteps circling his bed. His wife dreamed someone kept calling her by a name she'd never heard. The master's hounds refused to walk past the tree. Children claimed they heard people singing whenever the wind touched the glass. One night, the master ordered the tree cut down. 3 men arrived carrying axes. The first swung. The axe handle split clean in half. The second raised his blade. Before it struck, every bottle began to ring. Not loudly, softly, like church bells heard across water. The third man dropped his axe and walked away without saying a word. By sunrise, all 3 had left the plantation. No one ever saw them again. Years passed. The tree remained. Storms came. Floods came. Wars came. Still the bottles stayed. You see, people forgot Naya's name, forgot who planted the tree, forgot why the bottles were there. But the tree remembered. Trees always remember. My grandmother would lean close whenever she reached this part of the story. She'd lower her voice until you had to lean in too. Then she'd ask one question. If those bottles were only decorations, she'd smile. Why don't the birds ever build nests in them? I asked her once if the story was true. She looked out across the marsh for a long time before answering. "Baby, every story changes a little every time it's told." She smiled that knowing smile only old folks have. "But that tree." "Oh, that tree is real. And if you ever hear the bottles ringing on a day without wind..." She stopped. Her eyes drifted somewhere far beyond the porch. "Don't answer when they call your name. Because if the tree already knows who you are, It isn't asking.